My name's Tyler Fromm. I am married to Lee. My wife Lee is over here. We've been married for almost 7 years. We have 2 children, Ava, who's 2.5, and Parker, who is 5 months old. And so it is a little wild in our household right now. It's a little crazy. My mother-in-law, Kathy, is visiting with us, and that's been so good. Originally, I'm from Ontario. So I moved out here about 4 years ago to do my master's degree at Ambrose Seminary and to work at Mackenziestown Church. I was saying outside that I miss the Great Lakes, but the mountains are pretty good. And so there's kind of an offset there. I was enjoying wandering a little bit around the building. I noticed something strange, and I don't know if you can help me understand it, but I was in the bathroom and there was a sign that said, "Please do not wash your shoes in the sink." And I was thinking, there must be a story here or an extreme pattern of behavior. And so I looked at the sign and I thought, you know what, I don't like rules. So I took off my shoes and I stuck them in the sink and I washed them off so they're really clean. It's an odd thing, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe that's a pattern in middle school. I don't know. It's been a little bit. Now, I love Calgary, and in general, I love the city, which is ironic because I moved from a small town, about an hour north of London, 3,000 people, and I lived in this city, or in this little town, and I couldn't wait to get out. And so I moved to Toronto, and I went to school at York University, and then I kind of lived in the greater Toronto area for a while, and I used to love it because I would take this thing called the GO train. And the GO train was a way of doing public transportation to get around the GTA. And I loved the GO train because I could ride on it and watch people. Anyone in here like watching people? People are fascinating. See, sometimes we look at people and we think because they're in maybe different socioeconomic statuses than us that we don't have these shared things. And then you see all these different people and you realize, man, we are very similar. I used to love the GO train because I'd watch these guys that were high-powered executives traveling from Burlington, where I lived, to downtown Toronto. And I could tell they were high-powered because they had really nice suits and briefcases, and I'd watch them knowing there was a pattern about to emerge. I'd see them sitting there. And they'd settle in, and they would begin to vibrate and go, and then I'd watch their eyes get heavy. And then the classic head drop. Like I'd see these guys that were high-powered, probably made tons of money, and yet were so tired that it just didn't even matter. They were doing the same thing my toddler does. And you realize that when we're tired, it has this equalizing effect on us. That when we're tired, it really doesn't matter how successful we are. It doesn't matter how many achievements we have, what our past was like. When we're tired, we're all equal. And when we're tired, we are certainly not at our best. Now, maybe you can relate in this room to what it's like to be tired. Maybe in this season right now, you're exhausted. You're weak and weary. Maybe it's physically. Maybe you had one of those weeks where you worked and worked and worked, and you're even coming here on Sunday and you're physically worn out. But maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe it's a spiritual weariness. Maybe you're exhausted. Your faith is running on fumes. You're just barely making it through. All of us can relate to being exhausted. Maybe you've come through a season where you are worn out and you're starting to find your rhythm. Maybe you're deep in that, or maybe you're about to be headed into one of those seasons. I want to look at a story, and I'm calling it Weary Giant Killer. Now, when you hear the words weary giant killer, more often than not, you probably would be thinking David and Goliath. David and Goliath is one of those stories. When you hear giant killer, you think of David and Goliath. And I love that there's this cultural understanding of the story of David and Goliath. See, there's certain things, if you've been in the church for any period of time and read your Bible fairly comprehensively, there's certain stories that we have to explain to people. Like the donkey that speaks to a person. It's not one of those things that people go, oh yeah, of course. Donkeys, they speak. It's a strange thing, right? We sometimes are like, oh, whatever, it's weird. But David and Goliath has this cultural context that people understand. When we're talking about the story of David and Goliath, we don't have to explain it to people. They understand the story of David and Goliath. They use it to explain situations where there's someone smaller fighting against someone bigger, this small business versus this multinational corporation. It is a powerful story. And yet, I don't want to talk about David and Goliath. I want to talk about a different giant that I'm going to guess that most of you in this room probably haven't heard a lot about. I want to talk to you about Ishbi-Benob. Now, I don't know what engagement's like typically, but can we say Ishbi-Benob together? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ishbi-Benob. Great name, right? Like our son's name's Parker. I said to Lee, can we please name him Ishbi-Benob Fromm? It would be a much better name. She said no. I think we should bring it back. Let's try to get it on that list of the most common names. We'll start here. We'll make it a movement. Ishbi-Benob. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue like Goliath, does it? It doesn't quite stick in the same way. Anyone here ever heard of Ishbi-Benob? Okay, very few of us. So you might be wondering, why is this guy here with us talking about this story? And I believe that this story between David and Ishbi-Benob gives us this beautiful snapshot of what it looks like to be weary as a Christian. And more importantly, it helps us to understand, what does it look like to be weary in the context of Christian community? Because the truth is that in our spiritual life, we're always on this journey, and at times we're flying high, but it's inevitable that there will be other seasons that we're barely getting by. And so what do we do in those seasons? Now I want to read from 2 Samuel 21, 15 to 17. I don't know if you have your app or you have your Bible, but I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. 2 Samuel 21, 15 to 17. And it says this in verse 15. Once again the Philistines were at war with Israel. And when David and his men were in the thick of battle, David became weak and exhausted. Ishbi-Benob was a descendant of the giants. His bronze spearhead weighed more than 7 pounds, and he was armed with a new sword. He had cornered David and was about to kill him. See, it's rare that we hear about David in this light, that he's weak and exhausted. Oftentimes when we think about David, we're kind of bookended. We think David and Goliath, this young shepherd fighting this giant and overcoming incredible odds. Or we think about David and Bathsheba, this aging king that sits at home and watches and sees someone, a girl, a woman that he wants, realizes she's married, he doesn't care. And so he commits adultery with her and then has her husband killed, sends him out into battle. So those are two areas that we see of Jesus, or of David. I want to explore another facet of David. This is not David at his best. I want you to notice something in verse 15. Verse 15 starts with this: once again the Philistines were at war with Israel. So that's an interesting phrase, once again. Once again seems to indicate this pattern. Once again we're here. Once again we're at war with the Philistines. Now, if you're fairly familiar with the Old Testament, you would know that the Israelites are constantly at war with the Philistines. There's this pattern of here we are again. Once again. See, we understand once again, don't we? Once again, I'm here in this place. Once again, I'm stuck. Once again, I've been fighting and I'm just not seeing any progress. Once again, I'm alone. Once again, they let me down. See, we understand this once again, and it is not a good place or a fun place to be in. And that's where David is. David's found in the once again. He's in the thick of battle, and he's become weak and exhausted. And once again, here he is, and he's worn out. Now we know, don't we, that we're not at our best when we're worn out? I mean, if you're in here and you're a parent and you've had small little children, you understand that when you are physically exhausted, it becomes incredibly challenging to operate at any kind of reasonable speed. When you have brand new newborns, no one tells you. See, they say, oh man, they're so beautiful, and you just get to cuddle them, and yes, they are, but they're little tyrants that keep you up, and you sleep. See, there's a time you go, I only slept for like 5 hours last night. And then you have a newborn, and you're like, I got 35 minutes in one chunk. Like, it's rough, and I don't even get to complain nearly as much because my wife is the one that's up all the time. But there are times that I went, no one told me. They said you'll be tired, but this is a whole different thing. Like, I felt like a zombie. If someone asked me, hey, what's your middle name? I'd go, I'm not sure. Not sure. So I had one time that Ava was in a bassinet beside our bed. And I used to every once in a while think, you know what, I want to help Lee, support Lee, and so I'll pick Ava up and I'll rock her to sleep when she's awake. And so the one day I thought, I'm going to do this, and so I picked Ava up, and I was at the foot of our bed, and there's kind of this familiar, like you get really used to this, right? If you have children, I really worked on my calf strength. And so I'm rocking Ava to sleep at the foot of the bed, and Lee sits up in bed and looks at me. And in my head, I was like, what is going on? And she goes, what are you doing? Well, what do you mean, what am I doing? I am clearly being the best husband ever, and I'm rocking our kid back to sleep. And she's like, yeah, that's great. You might have better luck if you were rocking Ava to sleep and not holding your pillow in your arms. And then so I looked down, like I was like, no, oh shoot. My pillow was so relaxed after that though. My pillow was ready to go. Like you find those moments, right? That's the beauty. When you're married, you get to experience those things together, but you realize when you are exhausted, you are not even close to at your best. When you're tired and you're trying to do things that are normally fairly easy, it just becomes so much more complicated. Think about driving when you're tired. Like, it's scary. When you're driving when you're tired and you're trying to keep your eyes open and you're zoned in trying to focus, and suddenly there's like 10 minutes between when you remember and then where you are right now, and you're like, how did I get here? I'm really glad I'm okay. Like, it is not a good place when we are exhausted. And I don't know about you. See, maybe you're in here and you go, when I'm exhausted, it's when I like to do all the challenging things, but I am not like that. When I'm exhausted, I don't think, you know what I really want to do? Tackle a giant in my life. You know what I really want to do when I'm worn out? Confront something that I've been avoiding. You know what I really want to do when I'm exhausted? Do something incredibly hard. No, when I'm exhausted, I want to avoid all of that. But David's in a completely different position. He is here standing in front of Ishbi-Benob, the giant, weak and exhausted. Now, I want to just explain a couple of things about Ishbi-Benob that I think are helpful. The first is that he's a descendant of the giants, and that means that he's not a full-size giant. In fact, many scholars think he was a runt of a giant. So it says that his spearhead was 7 pounds, was a little bit more than 7 pounds, which is roughly half the size of Goliath's spearhead. So we can assume that he was significantly smaller than Goliath. Now, can you imagine what David's thinking in this moment? He is looking at Ishbi-Benob and he's thinking, I've been here before. I faced giants bigger than you. You're not that big. In fact, you're kind of small. You're not that impressive. Like, I wonder if he is getting a little bit prideful, thinking, you know what, Ishbi-Benob? Do you know who I am? Like, I'm the giant killer. That's how everyone knows me. You're not that big of a deal. Yeah, I'm tired, but I'm not worried. Like, I wonder if pride was developing in his own heart. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you feel fairly inflated? Like, I've got this figured out. Like, I'm pretty good at this. I had one time, I was in elementary school, and I had moved to this new town, and we had track and field, and I was pumped. So I was thinking, I'm pretty good at jumping, and so I'm going to get a chance to show off the whole school. It's small, but the whole school is watching. It's going to be super impressive. And so they set out the high jump area, and it's just off the asphalt, and there was kind of grass around, and I approached it like with some swagger, thinking, I've got this. And I ran with everything that I had, and I leapt over that bar, and I stared at the sky, and I appreciated the beauty of the clouds as they passed by. And I was in this moment thinking, like, I'm pretty awesome, until I was rudely awakened with because I realized I totally missed the pad, but I did in fact clear the bar, and I landed on the ground, on the other side. So I leapt like I was super impressive until I cleared everything, hit the ground so hard, like I thought grass was supposed to be soft. It wasn't. And so it's pretty hard to try to look cool when you're going, like I was not feeling very prideful at that moment. I was not going, wow, I am amazing, I'm such a good, I was like, I don't want to jump anymore. I don't even want to look at a high jump, I'm good. Have you ever been forcibly humbled? Like you're in that place where you go, I have pride, and then you hit that ground and suddenly you're like, I've got no pride. I am totally humbled. See, I wonder if that's what David went through in this moment, that he was prideful. And he didn't just have the wind knocked out of him. No, he was actually confronted and stuck, trapped in a corner, and he was on the brink of death. Pretty hard to be prideful in those moments. And I've noticed in our own spiritual lives, for those of us that are Christ followers, that there are seasons in our life that God uses to forcibly humble us. That we operate from this place of pride. And God just reminds us that your overconfidence, your abundance of self-confidence, no, it's not enough. Those are not fun seasons for us. It's not fun for us to be humbled. We don't enjoy that. See, we can have mountaintop experiences, can't we? We have these moments that are incredible, these moments that we look back on and go, that was amazing. Like David and Goliath, we can look at what we've conquered, what we've got through. And then we can start to get a big head and think, I did this. I was the one that accomplished this. I was the one that conquered that giant. I was the one that went and took that hill. And God can remind us, no, it's not about you. See, oftentimes we misread David and Goliath. So we make it one of those things where we think, wow, David is incredible. He fought that giant. We can leave sermons and we can think, I just need to confront the giants in my life. I just need to fight the giants. And we forget that the story is not meant to make David look good. It's meant to make God look big. The fact that God would use this little boy to confront the giant. The fact that David was just willing to fight the fight that God had put in front of him. See, the story is not meant to make David look like a giant killer. It's meant to help us to see who God is and that he, in fact, can use us because he is strong, not us. But we make it about us, don't we? I mean, that's our pattern. We're self-involved, and so we think, yeah, but I would really, if God wouldn't use me, like I've got this. And I wonder in your own life, how do you respond when things get hard? How do you respond when you're in a situation and you realize, I can't handle this anymore? It's beyond what I believe my capacity is. See, I think some of us, we actually back away from God. We respond by just distancing ourselves. We go, you know what? I'll just back away. We distance ourselves from community, from God's people, and we kind of think, okay, I'm dealing with heavy things that are beyond my capacity. I don't want people to see. I kind of want to pretend like things are good. I don't really want to let people in to what I'm dealing with. We can put ourselves in a self-imposed wilderness. See, maybe that's our response. Some of us, our family of origin, that's just, we kind of run from things. We kind of avoid things. Functionally, we say, I'll figure this out on my own. I've got this under control on my own, as if we're trying to say to people, like, I'm shocked that you would know I'm a human. I'm shocked that you would believe that I don't have it all figured out, because sometimes we do that in church, not this church. But in church where we walk in and we go, oh man, how's it going? Oh, great. Didn't your grandma just die? No, I'm wonderful, blessed. Like, were you like really, really, really sick this week? No, wonderful. God's good. right? We fake it until crisis happens where we can't fake it anymore. See, crisis has that effect that it forces honesty for us. That when we're dealing with things that we can't handle, suddenly we can't pretend anymore. See, in that moment when David was weak and exhausted, he couldn't just pretend like, no, don't worry, guys, I got this. He's weak and he's exhausted. When we're backed into a corner and it doesn't look good, it forces complete honesty from us. It forces us to be honest in our evaluation of where we're at spiritually. See, when we're facing challenging things, we can't pretend like it's easy. We actually have to navigate. How am I doing? I'm not doing well. And there's something significant in this story, because if it ended there, we'd kind of go, wow, okay, shoot. But there's two words next that are powerful, and the words are but Abishai. But Abishai, there is this glimmer of hope. It says, but Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue and killed the Philistine. See, isn't it interesting? We don't hear about Abishai. It's not like we're in Sunday school and we hear, hey, here's the story of David and Goliath, and then Abishai and Ishbi-Benob. And I don't know if it's because Abishai and Ishbi-Benob doesn't quite roll off the tongue. But we kind of put David in this place where it's like, wow, David's so impressive. Yeah, he screwed up, but he's powerful. He's a great king. And we kind of go, yeah, Abishai, he did his thing, but whatever. It's an interesting thing that Abishai actually killed a giant for someone else, that he saw someone in need and stepped in and took David, who was the rescuer, and rescued him. Subverted the whole story that we know. And this picture is a picture of what it means to be weary, weak, and exhausted in Christian community. Because the truth is that we desperately need each other. See, we can labor under this illusion that we're in this fight, and that's very North American. We're like, it's my own personal faith. But this was always meant to be done communally. It was always meant to be done as a community, going, we are in this together. And make no mistake, we are in a battle together. We're in a fight together, but we are not on our own. See, it's interesting in this story because we see David. We see David coming to this realization that he actually needs people. And that didn't come because he wanted it. It came because he was forced into a situation where he had to recognize, I need people. But we also see Abishai, who's willing to step in and actually support someone else, to put someone else before him. And I wonder, maybe in here you're called to be like Abishai. See, maybe you're around people dealing with challenging things, and your responsibility in this season is to strengthen them, is to fight beside them, is to actually be with them in the fight, saying, you are not alone. You might be weak and worn out and exhausted, but I am beside you, and we're going to do this together. Or maybe you're like David, and you're weak, and you're weary, and you're worn out, and you're exhausted. And you need to be reminded that there is an Abishai around you. There are people around you that are in this fight with you. But this is us talking about our hope in other human beings. See, the truth is, at some point, ultimately, people will, in fact, let us down. No matter what we do, no matter who we put our hope in beside us, at some point, each of us will let each other down. See, they actually do it in the next verse. And so here Abishai comes in and he kills the giant for David, and this is how they respond. Then David's men declared, you are not going out to battle with us again. Why risk snuffing out the light of Israel? See, isn't it interesting? Here's this moment that is so powerful, and the response of people is to have more fear. See, they look at what happened with David and Abishai, and they go, we got to watch David. He's human. We need to protect him. We can't let him go out into battle. They let fear drive what they did, because ultimately, as people, we let each other down, and we are motivated by things that aren't helpful. And so David, the one who fought battles for God, That was his whole track record, is that he was willing to fight the battles that God wanted him to fight, suddenly has to stay home from the fight. And isn't it interesting that they said, you're not going out to battle with us again. Why risk snuffing out the light of Israel? So David is the light of Israel? Like, I would be under the impression that God would in fact be the light of Israel. And so they're indicating here that their hope is not in God necessarily, it's in David, the human. Now, as an aside, most scholars believe that this is actually when David stays home and sees Bathsheba, commits adultery, and torpedoes so much of what he had done. The one who was supposed to be fighting is now observing from the sidelines, and that can so often be us. See, we get weak and weary and exhausted. We buy into this lie that we need to sit back, and so we watch from the sidelines instead of being reminded that we are in the fight. That we don't get to retreat. We don't get to sit at home and watch and wait for other people to do it. We're in the fight. That we're still called to fight the battles that God wants us to fight. See, it's interesting. Even when we're weak and we're exhausted, we're still meant to be in the battle. And when danger comes, when we face giants, here's the bad news. It's not about making us look stronger and better. When we're facing things that are beyond us, it's not so that we look powerful. The good news is it's so that God looks stronger and better and powerful. See, his power is made perfect in our weakness. But we forget that. See, we think I need to appear like I've got it all figured out. When I'm weak and I'm exhausted, I need to look like I'm strong. I can't let people see my weakness, but when our weakness is on display, his power is most on display. See, here's the truth. There is work to be done. In this community around you, there are people that do not know Jesus. There is a war for people's hearts and souls and minds and families, and God asks us to go and be the church. And it's going to cost us. And we're going to be weak, and we're going to be weary and exhausted, and we're going to see the giant in front of us and think, I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I feel trapped and stuck. And when you're in a moment that you feel weak and exhausted and you have no hope, I want to remind you of those two words, but Abishai. But it's not Abishai beside you. No, it's Abishai, a better Abishai, the true Abishai. It is the person of Jesus, the one who steps in those moments where you think, I have no hope. I am going to be killed. I am done for. I'm sunk. And Jesus is there saying, I've done it and I've conquered it. I'm stronger than what you're going through. Put your hope in me, not in what's going on around you. That our hope is found in Jesus. In the midst of our weariness, he is strong. Jesus invites us with this message in Matthew, and this is from the Message. Matthew 11:28-30, it says this, are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. See, maybe you're in here and you're worn out. Maybe you're exhausted. You feel trapped. Maybe people don't even know. Maybe you just feel like I got nothing left in the tank. I'm completely exhausted. And I want to know that your hope is not found in the people around you. Though there is hope there, your hope is found only in the person and work of Jesus. That in the midst of the giants that you see around you, that Jesus is stronger. See, he's the same one that died for us on that cross. He took our sins on himself as he hung up on the cross. And if it would have stopped there, it would have been pretty good news. But then Jesus actually conquered death, rose from the grave, and said, nothing is too big for me. See, death is the ultimate finality. And Jesus said, no, I'm stronger than that. So whatever you're going through, he's bigger than that. He's beside you, fighting with you. But there's an important step that you actually have to take, and that is to surrender. See, David, when he's fighting, he couldn't just keep fighting and keep going and hope that Abishai would stick his sword kind of around him and work around him. At some point, he had to actually create space to say, you fight. You fight. I don't have it. I've got nothing left. I can't do it. For most of us, I would say for all of us, there are moments in our lives that we simply need to surrender. And we need to say, I can't fight. I'll swing my sword, but I've got nothing left. If it's not for you, I've got nothing. And we put our faith yet again in Jesus to do what he has done and what he will do. Our hope is found in Jesus. And in the midst of our weariness, in the midst of the fight, in the midst of seeing this giant, that Jesus is greater, and he's stronger, and he's better, and we don't graduate from that. We don't go, yeah, Jesus was good because he got me into heaven and now I'm good. No, every single day we surrender yet again. Jesus, I'm trying to do this on my own. I need you.